It's been a while since we last visited Egypt and covered any of its mythology, so today we'll be taking a look at a goddess that I have previously mentioned in my video on Bastet, a goddess that is commonly associated with war, destruction and retribution, but on the other hand was also seen as a goddess of healing, medicine and the sun. If you haven't already guessed, I am indeed referring to Sekhmet, the lioness and warrior goddess of Egyptian myth. The very name Sekhmet was believed to have derived from the Egyptian word Sekhem, meaning power, to be strong and to be mighty, and like many of the fiercest goddesses that appear in the Egyptian pantheon, she was part of a collection known as the Eye of Ra. This included Hathor, Bastet, Wadjet, Mut, and of course Sekhmet herself. Now I have previously discussed how Sekhmet and Bastet were often considered to be the same deity, with them both having the head of a lioness, being the daughter of Ra, and marrying the god of craftsmanship and architecture Ptah. It was fairly common for the god of fragrance and beauty, Nefertum, to be attributed as either the son of Bastet or Sekhmet. Despite the numerous similarities between the two goddesses, there were still several ways that one could distinguish between them. Statues of Bastet would often be green, whereas those of Sekhmet would be red, and she would often be seen wearing a solar disc to represent her association with the sun. Now in time, Bastet's appearance would change to more of a domestic house cat, and she would be known for the protection of family and the home. Sekhmet, however, retained her fierce lioness appearance, and she was seen as far more unpredictable and destructive than Bastet. Now as time continued to pass, the connection between the two began to fade, and instead Bastet and Sekhmet were seen as examples of Egyptian duality. The region known as Upper Egypt became associated with Sekhmet. The worship of Bastet would now take place in the lower portion of the Egyptian kingdom. These two regions were separated by the river Nile, and the two goddesses were now connected by geographical location, rather than mythological stories. There are quite a few variations of how Sekhmet came to exist. Some believe that Hathor was sent to Earth by Ra. However, when she arrived, she became Sekhmet when she saw the humans had been ignoring the principles of Mahat. Sekhmet on her father's behalf would then take vengeance upon man. In her rage-filled trance, she became so violent that she slaughtered humans endlessly, drinking the blood of all of those that were slain. When Ra eventually saw what had become of Sekhmet, he became so afraid of what she could do that he filled the river Nile with beer, so it resembled blood. Mistaking the beer-filled Nile for blood, Sekhmet became so intoxicated that she could no longer continue her killing spree and fell into a deep slumber, eventually returning to her father peacefully. The ancient Egyptians then held festivals to pacify Sekhmet and to celebrate the end of the battle. These annual festivals were held at the very beginning of the year, and the ancient Egyptians would drink great deals of wine until they became extremely drunk. They would also dance and play music to soothe the wildness that Sekhmet represented. Over the years, Sekhmet became associated with several things. She was seen as a goddess of healing, but then again she was also known as Lady Pestilence, bringing disease and plague to all those who wronged her. The priests of Sekhmet were seen as extremely skilled doctors, and this somewhat resulted in varying depictions, the Lady of Life but also the Lady of Terror. She was also mentioned in several of the spells that feature in the Book of the Dead, in terms of both creation and destruction. During the period of the New Kingdom, Sekhmet was also considered to be the mother of Mahaz, the lion-headed prince and the god of war, whose name meant he who is true beside her, but much like Nefertum, he was also sometimes seen as the son of Bastet. Sekhmet is one of the fiercest warriors that we see in Egyptian mythology, but she was also seen as a great healer, two traits that aren't often coupled together. I hope you
war, magic, but also healing, and is a direct connection to the pharaoh. She comes to us from ancient Kemetic Egyptian deity and is an ideal representation of their deities in her anthropomorphic form, that being of the lion or cat-headed deity. And we've done many representations of deities in that form, particularly the strength from this civilization regarding the cat-headed. There would be Mahis and also Bastet who share that same representation with her, along with many others. She is specifically classified as a matron deity who was a recipient of worship, and into battle she carried many weapons but was most known for her bow and arrow. Her sacred symbol is the urus, the emblem of the raised cobra in a striking position. Her sacred color is red, and her sacred stone is the blood diamond. She is among the most powerful of the deities from the Kemetic pantheon, those of the Enid, and she takes on a role as the Eye of Ra. And although many goddesses would hold that role of a protector, and gain through him the power of the solar deity. Sekhmet is in many ways very different in how she uses that power. She also becomes a protector of the pharaoh through that role of being a protector of Ra. She accompanies the pharaoh into battle, and it is said that she would spread fear and alarm amongst his enemies. She was armed with arrows, which she shoots through hearts. And her image representation was always that of a lioness or a woman with a lion's head. She was also regarded as the mistress of magic, and she put her supernatural skills as a healer to assist those who had fought, particularly on behalf of the pharaoh. She is also the counter identity for the goddess Hathor, and many of the stories about Sekhmet start with her as she attacks mankind for offenses against the divinity, particularly against Ra, that humans had become divisive against his rule, and some sought to remove him. So she goes to mankind to inflict vengeance on them, and goes into a bloodlust in which she starts to kill mankind in great numbers, threatening even to destroy mankind itself. Not even Ra could rein in her wrath, and it was not until she was given beer dyed red that got her drunk enough to satiate her bloodlust. She wields her power from Ra in this way. She is a very vengeful manifestation of his power, very different than the other manifestations of the Eye of Ra. It is said that she breathes fire, and that the hot wind of the desert is her very breath. She is also linked to the spread of plagues. She is said to be the mother of the lion god Mahis, and she is still worshipped and venerated despite her acts of great carnage and slaughter against mankind. And during an annual festival held at the beginning of the year, people danced and drank great quantities of wine to ritually imitate the extreme drunkenness that stopped her wrath when she nearly destroyed all of humanity. Her connections to obviously other lion-headed goddesses or gods is very intriguing and requires more to understand what these connections mean.